This is Conversations with the Rhino. It is Turbulence Festival right now, and I'm currently with James from Crywank. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good, thank you.
So when did you get here? You been here all day, or?
No, we got here a bit late. We got here at I guess 5.
Oh, okay.
Around that time. We need a lot of rest. We've been touring for quite a bit now.
Yeah. So who are some of the bands you most excited to see tonight?
It's I Told You I Would Eat You are the band I'm most excited to see.
Oh, yeah, cool. So why did you decide to name yourself Crywank?
It wasn't really the most conscious decision initially. It was a nickname I was given.
Right.
I used to spend a lot of time in my bedroom. I didn't really leave the house for a long time. But the house that I was in was I wasn't a student, but it was a very student house. People would come in, so I'd still be very active socially when there were parties going on and things, but I just wasn't leaving the house. And I think because there'd be parties going on and this sad-looking person would just walk out their bedroom in a pair of pants, get a glass of water, ignore everyone, then go back into the bedroom with a joint, people just accused me, I guess, because of how antisocial I was, of crywanking.
Right.
So it became a nickname, and then when the band started, it just felt like quite an apt name rather than trying to think of one. It was one that was already given to me. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. On a base level, it's very puerile, but I think if you actually analyse it and think about it, it's something that's quite relatable and painful. The idea of having a difficult thought cross your mind whilst you're pleasuring yourself. So I like the idea of it being puerile on the surface level, but when you dig in deeper, it has something quite painful or interesting or relatable there, which is I guess what I try and do with some of my music.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. How long have you been going under the name of Crywank and making music?
I started doing Crywank the first day I picked up a guitar.
Right.
I wrote 2 songs in one night with 2 chords, both the same chords, and that was in August 2009.
Wow.
So just over 9 years now.
Okay. Cool. So I saw your post I don't know how long ago, it was a couple months ago, about DIY, and you just decided to not go by as a DIY band anymore.
Yeah.
You obviously care a lot about the DIY ethos. Do you reckon you'll ever go back to being full DIY?
I mean, essentially, the way the band operates is very close to a lot of DIY bands. I book all the gigs ourselves. We aren't on a label. Both me and Dan don't live anywhere. We both just couch surf and do the band so we can tour as much as possible.
Wow.
The large majority of everything is in a very DIY level. The only reason why we are kind of rejecting the term, which is kind of difficult for me because I've been speaking about it so much, I'm very ingrained blabbing on about DIY, but it's because we have a booking agent in Australia, we have a booking agent in North America, and we wouldn't be able to tour those countries without a booking agent. And for me, DIY is a term for empowering people at the bottom. Yeah. And there's loads of bands who come up through the DIY scene, and all of a sudden they're on a label, they have booking agents, they have people doing press for them, but they still use the term.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is something that should be done. So just as someone who's moving past that, I feel making that gesture will hopefully have other bands operate in a similar way.
Yeah.
Just because I fear something happening to DIY, which happened to punk music, happened to indie music, where a genre which is based largely to do with the approach and the ethos is then kind of gentrified by the music industry to become aesthetic.
Yeah.
And so, an indie band is all of a sudden no longer a band on an independent label. Regardless of genre, it's a band who sounds like Oasis or Kasabian.
Yeah.
A similar thing was happening with DIY, where the roots come from screamo, emo violence, oogly folk punk, and all of a sudden it was getting written about in Kerrang as socially conscious pop punk, and the bands who were getting written about were bands who have, booking agents, and were bands who have people doing press for them and are on labels, and I just see it as the gentrification of a working class genre which needs to be held by the people rather than allowing this to happen.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So your albums and EPs have a pretty simple and rough production. Do you use home studios or do you go to professional places?
For the first 3 recordings, they were all lo-fi, just recorded in houses. The first one was done in my parents' cellar, the second one my parents' kitchen, and the third one was done in the living room of a house I used to live in. But I mean, I'm very much so lo-fi out of necessity rather than lo-fi out of an aesthetic decision.
Yeah.
And and for the fourth and fifth albums, we did go into a studio to record them. And some people are like, "You're turning your back on lo-fi," and it's like, well, I would have recorded in a studio from the first place.
Yeah.
Some acts are lo-fi because they very much so want the aesthetic. They're going to spend a lot of money on tape 8 tracks and things like that. Some bands are lo-fi because they just can't afford a studio, and if they want to put something out, they have to record it on a phone, or they have to record it on a laptop or a friend's crappy little recording device.
Yeah. Cool. So your newest album, Egg on Face, Foot in Mouth, Wriggling, 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 pretty sure I got that right?
Yeah.
Features more electronic guitar than like some of the other albums, or all of the albums really. It was more than I've ever heard.
It actually
from
doesn't.
you guys. No?
It's all acoustic guitar.
Is it?
Yeah, it's all acoustic guitar.
But it comes out of a guitar amp, I assume?
No.
No?
I think the way it was recorded is maybe like the microphone is distorted.
Right.
But I mean, the main idea of the band is like I use no effects pedals. Dan uses no real effects. If the producer puts an effect on the microphone, that may have happened.
Yeah.
But largely Egg on Face, even in like heavier songs like Barbie or like trying to think, Holden Caulfield. It's not an electric guitar.
Okay.
It's just my acoustic guitar.
Wow, that's really cool. It sounds exactly like an electric guitar. And when I first listened, I was like, oh, holy shit, I love this. So from the attitude and the song topics and some of your supporting acts, is it fair to say that you're like a big fan of punk music and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm a big fan. I'm a big critic. I'm someone who navigates the scene.
Okay.
I'm also someone who is, I guess, I don't really appear very punk. I guess I look like a bit of a weirdo, but maybe not punk.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I've always been navigating the scene and have a lot of love for it, but I also don't always feel that reciprocated because I don't aesthetically embody it.
Yeah.
I'm interested in punk, and a lot of my biggest influences are punk bands or bands who have a punk ethos to their approach.
Okay, so what are some of your favourite like old and new punk bands, or just bands in general, really?
Old and new punk bands. I listened to the Urinals a lot, and I liked kind of how they played with minimalism and like having songs with just like 1 or 2 chords throughout the whole thing. I thought they were a riot. Cocaine Piss are one of my favourite current bands. I love them. We're playing with them this Friday coming up.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, Kermes, I brought them on tour because I think they're amazing. Maybe people wouldn't call them strictly punk. I mean, I sort of consider them just like the most techie pop band there are. But I mean, they're doing a similar thing to me, where it's the ethos is very much so rooted within punk.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cocaine Piss are easily the band who always spring to my head straight away. Cocaine Piss and the Urinals.
Cool, awesome, thank you. That's pretty much all the questions I've got. Have you got any announcements or gigs or anything that you want to get out to the people?
We do have a new album coming out next year. It's an album that I've been working on since 2012.
Wow.
It's going to be the most ambitious thing we've done. It's going to have more instrumentation than just me and Dan on it. The whole thing's like a concept album following a narrative. And hopefully everyone won't hate it because it's very, very different to what I've done before.
That's cool. Could I possibly ask a few questions about that? Like, well,
Yeah, of course,
how is it going to be different to your other albums then?
I think because of the instrumentation, the songs aren't necessarily about me. It's trying to speak more broadly, although it speaks on things like, depression and the human experience. It's very much so a narrative album about, I guess, kind of spirituality, or it's kind of just trying to explore existentialism, pantheism, perennial philosophy through kind of thought experiments in a narrative lyrical way.
Wow.
I guess if that makes any kind of sense.
I'm sure someone out there's going to know what you meant by that. Awesome. Wow. Do you have a release date for that?
We don't. It's one of those things where, because I've been working on it since 2012, there's actually a demo that got released, I think early 2013, called Privately Owned Spiral Galaxy, which has been the starting point of this. But because it's been such a long process, I have no issues with the process taking longer if it needs to. Like, I'm very much so viewing this as like, this will be the biggest thing I've ever done. This is what I've been working on for a lot of years. So I want to release it when it feels perfect. But it is at a point now where things are starting to come together. And I feel quite comfortable saying 2019 is when the album will be out.
Awesome. That's amazing. Really excited for that. Thank you so much for answering my questions and stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.